There's a lot of ways to get around Chicago. You could hop on Chicago's L or Metro trains, take a bus, jump on your bike, or hop in a car. But you could also take bike share. And today, we're going to be looking at Divvy.
And if you're not familiar with Divvy, it's Chicago's bike share system. Divvy was conceived in 2007 under Mayor Richard M. Daley, who went to Paris, saw their bike share system, and thought something like this could work in Chicago. In 2013, it opened under Mayor Rahm Emanuel with 75 stations and 750 bikes. Cut forward to today, and Divvy has over 1,000 stations with 15,000 vehicles, including classic bikes, e-bikes, and e-scooters. And they accounted for, in 2025, 6.8 million micro-mobility trips, out of 13 million when you add in Lime scooters. That's a lot of explosive growth in just over 10 years. Fun fact, these physical bikes are built by Lyft Urban Solutions, and they're shared across a lot of micro-mobility systems across North America, including Bay Wheels in San Francisco, Capital Bike Share in DC, CityBike in New York City, and even Bixi in Montreal. Divvy doesn't serve just some parts of Chicago, it covers the whole city, all 50 wards. In fact, even reaching into some suburbs, like Evanston. And by land area, Divvy is the largest bike share system in North America, covering 234 square miles. That's a whole lot of bike share. Divvy is used by a ton of different people too. When I bring friends or family around to Chicago who want a bike, they take a Divvy, whether it's going on our beautiful lakefront, the 606 trail, or somewhere else in the neighborhoods. But locals drive the demand, whether because they like the convenience of having Divvy, bikes that are always available, always maintained, and can never get stolen, or for any other number of reasons, including just hopping around on a local trip, say, near downtown. We've actually interviewed several Chicagoans who bike using almost exclusively Divvy. And Chicagoans can pay a newly discounted $99 a year for a Divvy membership, which gives you a ton of discounts, including free up to 45-minute classic bike rides, half-off Divvy e-bike rides, and a ton more. And low-income Chicago and Evanston residents can get a Divvy membership for just $5, making the Divvy system accessible to even more residents. And now, with all of that context, let's hop over to River North, where I was checking out a brand new type of station, an electric charging station, getting installed.
We are in River North, just north of downtown, where a new electric station is coming in, and we'll tell you all about it. But first, here's a conversation from 2 months ago with the leaders who keep Divvy running and growing.
Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. If we can start by each of you explaining your name, your role, and what it is that you're responsible for.
I'm David Powe. I'm Assistant Commissioner at the Chicago Department of Transportation, and I oversee micromobility, including the Divvy bike share system, Lime scooter operations, bike parking, and our Bike Chicago distribution program.
And my name is Sean Madison. I'm the General Manager with Lyft Urban Solutions in Chicago, and I oversee the Divvy program on behalf of Lyft.
And can you explain kind of the distinction between Divvy and Divvy's responsibility and the city? Like, who's responsible for what?
The city owns Divvy. It's our municipal bike share system, and we contract with Lyft Urban Solutions to operate the bike share system. But it's a much closer relationship than that sounds. We are very ingrained with one another's operations. So when we're siting new equipment, it really depends on where that station's going. But most of the stations are on the city's right-of-way. So on a sidewalk, on a city street, as you can see, between a bike lane and a bus lane and a turn lane. So the city primarily decides where those go. We get input from Lyft to make sure that that is going to be safe for their operations. No one's going to hit it. No one's going to damage it with their car or a loading dock or something like that. And so we work with them very closely on that. But ultimately, it's the city's decision on where we put these stations with tremendous input from Lyft.
Divvy is a really good example of a public-private partnership that works. Lyft is able to bring capital, hardware, software to kind of empower now the geographically largest bike share system in North America. And we work extremely closely with CDOT, as David mentioned, to ensure those outcomes on a daily basis. And stations, I think, when we'll get into the weeds of that, is a really good example of how we do that.
What is the city's goal with Divvy? Why do we have or need bike share in the first place?
So the city's primary goal with bike share is to get people out of cars and onto bikes or scooters. We want fewer people driving and more people on these beautiful bike lanes, on this awesome bus lane that you see right behind me, on our trains, and we want people walking and rolling across the city. So one of the best ways to do that is to offer a bike share system. It's kind of a gateway, an entryway into biking and scooting for a lot of people. And most Chicagoans are within a short walk of a Divvy station now, where they have a choice of our classic blue bikes, which are the cheapest option for people, our e-bikes, and then all the way down at the end, our wonderful e-scooters. But also it's a great way for visitors to not have to take a ride share, to not have to rent a car. They can explore the city on a bike, on a scooter, and we really, really want to get more people onto these, using these wonderful bike lanes to help with congestion, to lower emissions, and it saves them a lot of money too. So that is our primary goal with expanding, giving people options, mitigating the impacts of climate change, and reducing congestion.
Can you tell us a bit about the system? How many people ride Divvy? How many stations? How many bikes? And how's that changed over time?
Yeah, so Divvy first started in 2013. This was back when we had, I believe it was 75 stations and 750 classic blue bikes. That was 12 years ago. We have expanded quite a bit. We now have over 1,000 stations citywide. And so basically everyone can get a device that they want in their neighborhood of choice, which has been a great progress over the last 12 or so years. Number of rides that we've been seeing is about 6 to 7 million rides per year. And if this summer is any indication, we've set several ridership records month over month. We should be setting some more records continuously down the road. So we're really heading in the right direction.
With more people using e-bikes, but with those costing more per minute, I know affordability has been a big issue with bike share in the city. How does Divvy and CDOT manage affordability, and how do you balance those concerns?
That is the question that we get most often, but we get it less and less now because of a tremendous investment that the city and Lyft made into our system this year. We invested over $3 million into making Divvy more affordable and accessible. And I think the crown jewel of that investment has been a $99 membership for new and return members. We understand that people didn't see Divvy as the number one option all the time for everyone. And so what we wanted to do was lower the barriers to entry. We're also offering tremendous discounts on e-bike trips for members. So now e-bike trips are capped at a certain price up to 45 minutes to give you that predictability. We're also stabilizing prices for current members. So if you paid $143 for a membership last year, we're working with Lyft to freeze that price for this year. And we understand that affordability is a problem, not just for Divvy, but for everything in America right now. And as cars are getting more expensive, housing is getting more expensive, Divvy is actually getting cheaper. It's one of the few things that's getting cheaper. And we're committed to keeping those prices as low as possible so more people can choose Divvy. It's the logical choice for more people every day. And we really see that in these ridership records that we saw. And so we're really excited to have lowered prices for people, to stabilize prices for members, and to continue into the next few years with making sure that this is an affordable option for everybody.
How do you pick Divvy locations? How can you tell where there's pent-up demand or make predictions based on local factors like a concert venue?
We work really closely with CDOT's Complete Streets teams. And so anytime there's a new bikeway, a new piece of bike infrastructure that's going down in the city, we primarily target those areas. So we look at bikeways, we look at major things like transit stops, big employers, major destinations like the lakefront, like the Loop. And we try to look at those areas where there's going to be demand or there's already demand. We can use things like out-of-station trip ends, which is the number of times that someone ends an e-bike trip or an e-scooter out of a station. We look at those types of data points to decide where we might put stations. And what we generally see is places like the Salt Shed, the lakefront, where we might not have as many Divvy stations as we want, but that's because we've been targeting residential areas. We've been targeting employers. We've been targeting commercial corridors, areas where people are going every day. And so right now, we've really targeted areas where we're seeing that occasional trip. But we've also started to densify our network in areas where people are using Divvy every day. Like this station right behind me is in response to the boom in demand that we've seen over the last year in Divvy. And we understood that there were a lot of people ending their rides at this particular intersection. And so this is just one example of how we're taking that data and we're making these micro level decisions of exactly where to put stations.
How do you think Divvy has changed biking in Chicago and changed the city more broadly?
Yeah, I think bike share in general is aimed to democratize biking in general. I think it lowers the barrier to entry for something that could be viewed by some residents as like a scary thing to try out, biking in an urban environment. And I think bike share essentially like allows you to do that in a low stakes basis. And I always say like any cyclist should like Divvy because Divvy benefits all cyclists because of those reasons. Better infrastructure, better planning, better data, that leads to better outcomes for all cyclists around Chicago.
Fabulous. Yeah, David.
So before I joined CDOT, I worked at Active Transportation Alliance around bicycle advocacy. And following up on everything that Sean said, one thing that BikeShare has done for Chicago is it's helped build a community of new cyclists. I've met so many people who said, David, I didn't really get into cycling until I tried a Divvy when my mom was visiting from Wisconsin. Or one weekend I went on the 606 with my friends. Or I was running late to a doctor's appointment and took an e-bike. But I started using it, I got a membership, and now I use it all the time. I can go from door to door instead of having to wait for the bus or the train or having to take a $25 Uber or Lyft. And now that we've got all of these wonderful protected bikeways across the city, now people can do that extremely safely. And as the city builds out its bikeways network, we're following that build out with more and more Divvy stations so that we're giving new users, new riders the opportunity to experience the joy of cycling, experience how safe it can be in Chicago on these new concrete protected bike lanes. And it's also a great impact of this is it's building more advocates for bikeways in the city. And we're really grateful for that and for this partnership with Lyft to help us build the system out.
And we kind of talked about this, but who picks station locations and how do you pick the type and the size, right? Like we're in the Loop. This is an area with really high demand. We're seeing bikes kind of stacking up at rush hour sometimes. What does that look like? What are the logistics that go into picking that?
Yeah, so primarily the decision is ultimately up to CDOT's engineers. So we pick a location for a station based on these out-of-station trip-ins, based on demand, based on major destinations, or a new development like the Obama Presidential Center, a new apartment complex in West Loop, things like that. But our engineers have the ultimate say on where we can safely put a Divvy station. We work with our engineers to make sure that things like a manhole won't prevent us from putting a station somewhere because it might impede normal electrical operations. Primarily, we want to make sure that cyclists can get in and out of the station safely, that it's not going to be hit by a vehicle, and that it doesn't impede the flow of pedestrians and primarily people passing each other in wheelchairs or other mobility devices. This station in particular was a new pilot location because we had never put a station between a bike lane and a bus lane like this before. And so we worked with our engineers, with our Complete Streets team to make sure that people could pull these bikes out of the station without getting into the bike lane. And then we also wanted to make sure that the station that you see wasn't going to get hit by a bus or by the side view mirrors of cars. So it took a lot of discussion, but we ultimately piloted this location and we've since added 2 other stations in the same configuration, and we have probably a dozen more planned.
Yeah, I think there are a few variables that we consider when it comes to station types. One is the size, as you mentioned. So that is really a factor of what we see as the potential demand. Navy Pier, for example, is our biggest station in the entire network that we recently expanded. We've expanded kind of over and over on several iterations because of its particular location. It's kind of on an island by itself. It's the only station around. There's not many other good places for a station, so we really needed to double down and create a lot of infrastructure there. The other factors that we can consider are the layout types. So we have a standard kind of flat layout here that you see dock, dock, dock. We also have a staggered layout that can allow for us to have more docking spaces in the exact same footprint. We call this our densified layout, and this is a way to pack more docks in the exact same amount of footprint. What that's great for is places that there's not a lot of spots to put stations down. So the Loop is a perfect example. There's a lot of stuff going on in the Loop, as you see behind us. Square footage is at a premium, and so these staggered station layouts can be a really effective tool to get more docks where we need them. The last thing that we do is we electrify certain stations. So the electrification of stations allow for them to charge our e-devices. And this is a game changer because to supply the thousands of e-bikes and e-scooters that we have in our system today without charging infrastructure, we would need to essentially have vans travel around the city swapping batteries out. Our goal now in the next 2 years is to develop over 100 charging stations throughout the network. So we think that's kind of a game changer. We're doing that in earnest right now. I know we're going to be going in detail over an electrification install, which is going to be really exciting.
For each of you, what is your favorite Divvy station and why?
I thought long and hard about my favorite Divvy station, and I am a lifelong Chicago Cubs fan, and we had some issues around Wrigley Field this year where there were way too many Divvy trips ending for Wrigley Field events, which is a great problem to have. We addressed this with valeting stations, but still it was very difficult to keep up with this demand. So back in June, we worked closely with the ward, with CPD, with OEMC to come up with some options to clean up the streets and provide more docking points for concert goers, for ball game goers, etc. And we came up with a really creative pilot that we rolled out in June at Addison and Sheffield, literally steps away from the bleachers entrance. And it was independent docking stations on the sidewalk in between tree pits. The first time we'd ever done something like that in Chicago. And it was so successful that just 2 weeks ago, we expanded that greatly. We, I think, 4x the station size by expanding into the street, taking over and connecting these disparate different docking stations into one full station. And now we're able to supply many, many more docking points for users of the Wrigley Field stations. We're able to supply and better clean up the streets during big events like Cubs games and just in time for playoff baseball on the north side.
Fabulous. Great answer. All right, David.
My favorite Divvy station is by far the Navy Pier station for a number of reasons. Not just because it's our busiest Divvy station. It saw almost 150,000 rides last year alone. And we anticipate that number to go up this year because we've increased capacity so much. But also because of the memories I've developed at the Divvy station at Navy Pier. Divvy helps so many people from all over the world experience Chicago in a new way. And I've gotten to put my brothers, my dad, friends from all over onto an e-bike or an e-scooter for the first time and watch them use it for the first time right at Navy Pier with the lake in the background, with the big Ferris wheel right there. It's so cool. So I think that's probably my favorite because of all the wonderful memories I've developed there, but also because it has the most ridership of any station in the network.
How do you connect Divvy to transit? What does that look like connecting them to CTA stations, bus stops, stuff like that?
Well, excitingly, we are actually only one Divvy station away from serving every CTA rail station in the city. We work very closely with CTA, Metra, and Pace to make sure that we have Divvy stations at every one of their major ridership generating facilities, as well as all of their rail stations and pulse stations.
How does Divvy interact with bike infrastructure, particularly when there's gaps in bike infrastructure, but there's a lot of demand, like on Michigan Avenue?
So Divvy works very closely with our bikeways team to show them the data that we have that shows this demand for new bike infrastructure. We have a really awesome data aggregate system called Populous that we use, and it shows us where the majority of our trips are being taken. We share that with our bikeways team, and they'll say, well, we didn't know that there were that many people riding on this small corridor throughout the city, but this is really useful information. And they'll use that then to inform where they're putting bike infrastructure.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for chatting about Divvy and the bike share system.
Thank you, Victor.
Thank you. It's my favorite topic.
Me too.
Well, it is a few months later and several degrees colder. Sean Madison, thank you for joining us again to talk about the station that's going out and the densified electric station that's going in.
Thanks for having me.
So, Sean, what is an electrified and densified station? I think most people have no idea what that means.
Yeah, so there's two separate things, but we're combining them into one today. An electrified station is a station that connects to the electric grid, and it allows for us to charge our battery-powered devices, which in Chicago are our electric scooters and our electric bikes. And a densified station is when we can essentially stagger the docks in such a way that we can fit 50% more docks. This is a great solution for the densest parts of our city, like River North, where we're at today, at Wells Street and Hubbard.
And why do you need the electrified stations? Like, how does an e-bike normally get charged if not through the dock? I think most people actually think that the docks charge the e-bikes.
Yeah, well, we love e-bikes, first of all. It's a kind of a game changer for micromobility. It's a game changer for Chicagoans. But without an electrified station, it requires a lot of manual battery swapping to keep our fleets up and running.
Wow.
And to actually, the electrified station, what this brings is the ability for our devices to charge directly when they dock. So we retrofit all of our devices with special triangles that literally just connect as if you're plugging your phone into an outlet, and they charge up throughout the day, and overnight they kind of go to full charge.
So are you saying that if you don't have an electrified station and there's a Divvy somewhere, how that gets charged is someone like comes over to it, pulls the battery, puts a new one back in?
That is how it works, which is why we're so excited about the electrification progress we're making. Our goal is to have 110 stations electrified by the end of 2027, and we are well on path to do that.
And how long does it take an e-bike to charge? Is this like you punch it in, 30 minutes later it'll be full of juice?
I would say it's very similar to a cell phone. So the idea for us is throughout the daytime when the bikes are really getting a lot of usage, it would go to a charging station, it would add a few, bars on the battery charge, and then overnight it would kind of get to full juice. And so our goal is to, with even just a few amount of stations, we're getting 110, we have 1,100 stations throughout our network. So at only 10%, we can reduce the amount of manual battery swapping by up to 75%.
So you're telling us that these electric stations, they save you guys a bunch of work, the bikes are going to be generally more charged. Why isn't every station an electric station, Sean?
Well, because it requires a lot of infrastructure work. So we have to partner closely with ComEd, the utility in Chicago, to allow for us to tap directly into the electric grid. We've negotiated deals with ComEd, we've worked with CDOT and various other partners to identify the top stations that would have the most benefit for the system. And then we work through a very long process to essentially connect directly to that grid. And so that's what we had done here to do prep work on this particular site. And that prep work is all finished, so we're ready to deploy the station today.
Okay, so it's not like just plugging in my hairdryer to an outlet. You can't just plop them anywhere. There's a lot of like digging and groundwork and prep and permits and all sorts of stuff that go into it.
Yeah, I would say like the whole entire process from start to finish, once we identify a station, takes at least 6 months.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you're saying that more stations are going to get electrified. What's kind of the plan with that? How do you pick stations that get electrified?
Yeah, so we have a pretty robust plan for 2026. Our goal is to get to 110 stations electrified by the end of 2027, and we hope to do up to 60 sites this year. The process really entails of two things. We want to find the highest ridership stations. We also want to have a good geographic spread and destination. So we want work stations, we want home stations, we want entertainment stations. So that way, no matter what time of day, bikes are being able to get charged at the stations that we have electrified. And we've shortlisted now these 60 sites for electrification in 2026.
You were mentioning the benefits to Divvy and like being able to get these bikes charged more often with less manual labor, but what's the benefit to a Divvy customer having these new charging stations?
Yeah, I think the main benefit to Divvy users is the availability of electronic devices. So e-bikes and scooters will be more readily available. They'll be more fully charged, ready to rock for whatever you need. And that is kind of paramount to us. Our goal is to make sure that any Chicagoan throughout the entire city that wants to ride a Divvy has access to, and they're able to find the device of choice when they want it. These electric stations just get us so much closer to achieving that goal because we can just essentially top up the batteries, which is one of the biggest issues that we face when we have to manually swap.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know too, with the densified stations, which we can see those coming in now, which is fabulous, they're also going to mean probably less stations out of the dock, right? You're going to have like, I work downtown and sometimes there's just like a pile of bikes next to the dock. So with these new stations, is it also going to kind of just hopefully clear up the sidewalk and make it so that the bikes aren't ever in the way?
Absolutely. Our goal with the densified station is get as many docks in our areas of peak demand as we possibly can and really clean up that sidewalk, as you're saying.
And what are the big benefits of an electric station from an operational perspective? You kind of mentioned, you don't have to do manual battery swaps. Is there anything else?
Yeah, so I think that's number one, is really getting our vans off the road as much as they are today to keep our electronic devices up and running. And this has a kind of wider benefit to the city at large of reducing vehicle miles traveled, clearing up our streets to better service the Divvy users, better service the communities that we serve.
So you're saying that with these electric stations, you're helping reduce traffic a little bit because you're not needing as many vans out on the road, swapping batteries, parked somewhere. It's going to take care of itself most of the time, and then if you have a Divvy out in the middle of nowhere, someone goes by and swaps the battery.
Exactly, and we're doing that on two levels. We're keeping bikes up and running more often, so more people are riding devices itself. And then to do that, we are using less vehicles to actually operationalize that, which frees up, congestion on our streets.
Fabulous.
And just a few hours after Sean and I finished talking, the old Divvy station had been pulled out, and the new, denser electric station had gone in, ready to store more bikes and keep e-bikes and e-scooters charged and ready for the afternoon rush. Thanks for watching that video, and thank you to Sean and David for helping show us how Divvy works and operates. This video took months of hard work, including coordination, 2 different shooting days and 2 different seasons, and a ton of work in the edit. And we actually couldn't fit in all of David and Sean's great comments, so we'll be posting an extended cut in the description down below. And if you want to see more Chicago biking content, make sure to subscribe and tell a friend, and leave a comment with what you'd like to see us talk about next. It's Chicago's bike share system. That did not work at all.
All right, well, wait a second. Good. Gives me a break to...
Yeah.
Okay, so next one.
We're finding as many stations as we can. We could,
right, well,
we could pause here. That was a very quick one back and forth, east northbound.
They're going.
We have 110 sites that we are targeting to do. All right, let's do it one more time. We'll do it one more time.
Well, we gotta take a sip of our bevy.
I think we might get a reprieve here for a second. I think we got that question at least.
We at least finished that.
Yeah.
We're gonna do this one question at a time.
I think there's a lot of benefits. Oh, we got ships passing.
Jesus Christ.
It also is like we can barely see it, so
I
it's
know,
just like,
it's
you
like
just
surprise.
noise. Yeah.
Train.
We love transit. We love it.
We love transit. We have a great blooper reel.